So, hello and welcome back to another day of Ivanhoe. I think we're getting close to the end of this book. We are definitely in at least the last third. This has been a lot longer than I thought. I don't know why I don't look at the chaptery bits and figure out how long each one's going to be, but every book takes me by surprise. Some of them feel so much longer than others, and some of them feel like they go by in just the blink of an eye. I feel like most of the Jules Verne books that we've read have been just like boom, and it's done, and I'm like, wait, it's over? How's it over? And this one I've been enjoying. I really have. And it's been getting better the longer it goes, which is good because it's got a long way to go. It looks like, oh my gosh, what is the last chapter? Because we are on chapter 31. I don't know why I'm looking at this. It's going to be in Roman numerals. I'm not going to be able to tell, but it looks like we've got at least 20, 25 more chapters to go. We're going to be reading this book for a while. Makes sense. It's kind of like an epic saga. So far, the only character I really, really like is Rebecca. Maybe I like Wamba a little bit, but I don't think Wamba's going to be around much longer, unless some miracle occurs and the siege of this castle succeeds really quick, which I'm a little bit worried because we left with Fond de Boeuf burning to death in his bed, Ulfride or Urfride heading to self-immolate because she thinks she's going up with the castle. Ivanhoe's flat on his butt. Athelstein is still locked up. Rebecca is still locked up, and who knows what's happening to Isaac. I don't really care about the Templar or the other dude because I personally put them in the bad guy situation. So yeah, and then there's the whole Prince John of it all, who's gone off to do stuff in York? Question mark. What I'm saying is no wonder there's still a third of this book left because we've got a lot of loose ends to wrap up, and hopefully we'll wrap up some of them today. This looks like a long-ish chapter, so I should probably shut up and get to the quote, which is what I'm going to do now. Once more onto the breach, dear friends, once more. Or close the wall up with our English dead. And you, good yeomen, whose limbs were made in England, show us here the mettle of your pasture. Let us swear that you are worth your breeding. King Henry V. I don't know if that's a quote or if it's from, I think Shakespeare wrote some plays about King Henry. I don't know. My classic literature knowledge is probably not as good as it could or should be, which is why we're doing this, and I'm rectifying that. So we're going to jump back into Sir Walter Scott's epic book, Ivanhoe, with chapter 31. Cedric, although not greatly confident in Ulrica's message, omitted not to communicate her promise to the Black Knight and Locksley. They were well pleased to find that they had a friend in the palace who might in the moment of need be able to facilitate their entrance, and readily agreed with Cedric that a storm, under whatever disadvantages, ought to be attempted as the only means of liberating the prisoners who were now in the hands of the cruel Fond de Boeuf. The royal blood of Alfred is endangered, said Cedric. The honor of a noble lady is in peril, said the Black Knight. And by the Saint Christopher at my baldric, said Locksley, were there no other cause than the safety of that poor faithful knave Wamba, I would jeopardize a joint ere a hair of his head was hurt. And so would I, said the friar. What, sirs, I trust well that a fool, d'ye see me, sirs, a fool that is free of his guild and is master of his craft, and can give as much relish and flavour to a cup of wine as ever a fitch of bacon can, I say, brothers, such a fool shall never want a wise clerk to pray for or fight for him at a strait. Not while I can say mass or flourish a parazon. And with that he made his heavy halberd play around his head like a shepherd boy flourishes a light crook. True, holy clerk, said the Black Knight. True as if St. Dunstan himself had said it. And now, good Locksley, were it not well that noble Cedric should assume the direction of this assault? Not a jot ere I, said Cedric. I have never been wont to study either how to take or how to hold these abodes of tyrannical power which the Normans have erected in this groaning land. I will fight at the front, but my honest neighbors well know I'm not a trained soldier in the discipline of war or the attacking of strongholds. Well, since that's what Cedric says, said Locksley, I am most willing to take on me the direction of the archery, and you shall hang me up on my own trysting tree before the defenders are permitted to show themselves over the walls without being stuck with as many arrows as there are cloves in a gammon of bacon at Christmas. Well said, stout yeoman, said the Black Knight, and if I be thought worthy to have a charge in these matters, and can find among these brave men as many as are willing to follow a true English knight, for that I surely call myself, I am ready, with such skill as my experience has taught me, to lead them to attack these walls. And so the parts being thus distributed to the leaders, they commenced the first assault, of which we have already heard. When the Barbican was carried, the Sable Knight set notice of the happy event to Locksley, asking him at the same time to keep a strict observation on the castle so as to prevent the defenders from combining their force for a sudden sally, and recovering the outer work that they had lost, which would be a disaster. This the knight was chiefly desirous of avoiding, conscious that the men who he led, being hasty and untrained volunteers, imperfectly armed and unaccustomed to discipline, must upon any sudden attack fight at a great disadvantage with the veteran soldiers of the Normans, who were well provided with arms both defensive and offensive, and who, to match the zeal and high spirit of the besiegers, had lost all the confidence which arises from perfect discipline and the habitual use of weapons. The knight employed in the interval in causing to be constructed a sort of floating bridge or a long raft, by means of which he hoped to cross the moat in despite of the resistance of the enemy. This was a work of some time, which the leaders the less regretted, as it gave Ulrica leisure to execute her plan for diversion in their favor, whatever that plan might be. When the raft was completed, the Black Knight addressed the besiegers. It avails not waiting here any longer, my friends. The sun is descending to the west, and I have upon my hands which will not permit me to tarry with you another day. Besides, it will be a marvel if the horsemen come not upon us from York, unless we quickly get this done. Therefore, one of you go to Locksley, and bid him commence a discharge of arrows on the opposite side of the castle, and move forward as if they were about to assault it. And you true English hearts, stand by me, and be ready to thrust the raft endlong over the moat whenever the postern on our side is opened. Follow me boldly across, and aid me to burst yon sally part in the main wall of the castle. As many of you as like not in this service, or are but ill-armed to meet it, do you man the top of the outer work, and draw your bowstrings to your ears, and mind you quell with your shot whatever appears to man the ramparts. Noble Cedric, will you take the direction of those who remain? Not so, by the soul of Hereward, said Saxton. I cannot lead, but may posterity curse my grave if I follow not whoever is in the front and points the way. The quarrel is mine, and it well becomes me to be in the vanguard." "But think, noble Saxon," said the knight, "you have neither hauberk or corslet, or anything but that light helmet, target, and sword." "All the better," said Cedric. "I will be the lighter to climb the walls, and forgive my boast, Sir Knight. You shall this day see the naked breast of a Saxon as boldly presented to battle as ever you saw the steel corslet of the Normans." "In the name of God, then," said the knight, "fling open the door, launch the floating bridge." The portal which led from the inner wall of the Barbican to the moat, and which corresponded with a sally port in the main part of the castle, was now suddenly opened. The temporary bridge was then shoved forward, and soon flashed in the waters, extending its length between the castle and the outer work, and forming a slippery and precarious passage for two men abreast to cross. Well aware of the importance of taking the foe by surprise, the Black Knight, followed closely by Cedric, threw himself upon the bridge and reached the opposite side. Here he began to thunder with his axe upon the gate of the castle, protected in part from the shot and the stones cast by the defenders by the ruins of the old drawbridge, which the Templar had demolished when retreating from the Barbican, leaving it still attached to the upper part of the portal. Unfortunately, the followers of the knight had no such shelter. Two were instantly shot with crossbolts, and two more fell into the moat, and the others retreated back to the Barbican. The situation of Cedric and the Black Knight was now truly dangerous, and would have been still more so but for the constancy of the archers at the Barbican, who never ceased to shower their arrows upon the battlements, distracting the attention of those by whom they were manned, thus affording a respite to the two chiefs from the storm of missiles which otherwise would have overwhelmed them. But their situation was eminently perilous, and becoming more so with every moment. "Shame on y'all!" cried De Bracy to the soldiers around him. "Do you call yourself crossbowmen, and let these two dogs keep their station under the walls of our castle? Heave over the coping stones from the battlement, and better may not be. Get a pickaxe, get levers, and down that huge pinnacle," he said, pointing to a heavy piece of stone carved work which was projecting from the parapet. At this moment, the besiegers caught sight of the red flag on the angle of the tower which Ulrica had described to Cedric. Locksley was the first who was aware of it, as he was hastening to the outer work, impatient to see how the assault was going. "St. George!" he cried. "Merry St. George for England! To the charge, bold yeomen! Why leave you a good knight and poor Cedric to storm the pass alone? Make in, mad priest, and show that you can fight for your rosary. Make in, brave yeomen, the castle is ours, we have friends on the inside. See that flag? It's the appointed signal. Torquilstone is ours. Think of honor, think of the spoils. Just one push and the place will be ours." And with that he bent his good bow, and sent a shaft right through the breast of one of the men-at-arms, who, under De Bracy's direction, was loosening a fragment from one of the battlements to drop on the heads of Cedric and the Black Knight. A second soldier caught from the hands of the dying man the iron crow with which he heaved at and had loosened the stone pinnacle, when, receiving an arrow through his headpiece, dropped from the battlements into the moat. The men-at-arms were thus daunted, for no armor seemed proof against the shots of this tremendous archer. "Do you give ground, you base knaves?" said De Bracy. "Montjoie Saint Denis, give me the lever." And snatching it, he again assailed the loosened pinnacle, which was of weight enough, if thrown down, not only to have destroyed the remnant of the drawbridge which sheltered the two assailants, but also to have sunk their rude float of planks that they had crossed upon. Everyone saw the danger, and the boldest, even the stout friar, avoided setting foot on the raft. 3 times did Locksley bend his shaft against De Bracy, and 3 times did his arrow bounce back from the knight's armor. "Curse on thy Spanish steel coat," said Locksley. "If an English smith had forged it, those arrows would have gone through, just like it would have been if they'd have been silk." He then began to call, "Comrades, friends, noble Cedric, bear back and let the ruin fall." His warning was unheard, though, for the noise which the knight himself occasioned with his strokes upon the postern would have drowned out even war trumpets. The faithful Gurth, indeed, sprang forward onto the planked bridge to warn Cedric of his fate, or share it with him. But his warning would have come too late. The massive pinnacle already tottered, and De Bracy, who still heaved at his task, would have accomplished it, if not for the voice of the Templar sounding close in his ear. "We're lost, De Bracy," said the Templar. "The castle burns." "You're mad to say that," said the knight. "It is all in a light flame on the western side. I have tried in vain to put it out." With the stern coolness which formed the basis of his character, Brian de Bois Guilbert communicated this hideous intelligence, which was not nearly as calmly received by his astonished comrade. "Saints of paradise!" said De Bracy. "What is to be done? I vow to Saint Nicholas of Limjoie a candlestick of pure gold for—" "Spare your vow," said the Templar, "and listen to me. Lead your men down, as if to sally. Throw open the postern gate. There are only 2 men occupying the float. Fling them into the moat and push across for the Barbican. I will charge from the main gate and attack the Barbican from the outside, and if we can regain that post, be assured we will defend ourselves until we're relieved, or at least till they grant us quarter." "It's well thought upon," said De Bracy. "I'll play my part. Fine. Templar, you won't fail me." "Hand in glove, I will not," said Bois Guilbert. "But go quickly, in God's name." So De Bracy hastily drew his men together and rushed down to the postern gate, which he caused instantly to be thrown open. But scarce was this done before the porterous strength of the Black Knight forced his way inward, despite De Bracy and his followers. 2 in the front instantly fell, and the rest gave way, notwithstanding all of their leaders' efforts to stop them. "Dogs," said De Bracy, "will you let 2 men win our only pass for safety?" "He's a devil," said a veteran man-at-arms, bearing back away from the blows of their antagonist. "And if he be the devil," said De Bracy, "would you fly from him into the mouth of hell? The castle burns behind us, you idiots. Let despair give you courage, or let me go forward. I'll cope with this man myself." And well and chivalrous did De Bracy that day maintain the fame that he had acquired in the civil wars of that dreadful period. The vaunted passage, to which the postern gave interest, and to which the 2 champions were now fighting hand to hand, rung with furious blows that they were dealing each other. De Bracy with his sword, the Black Knight with his axe. At length the Norman received a blow, which, though its force was partially parried by his shield, for otherwise De Bracy never would have moved again, did descend with such violence upon his head that he measured his length upon the floor. "Yield, De Bracy," said the Black Champion, stooping over him and holding against the bars of his helmet the fatal poniard with which knights dispatched their enemies, and which was called the mercy dagger. "Yield, Maurice de Bracy, rescue or no rescue, or you are a dead man." I will not yield, said De Bracy faintly, to an unknown conqueror. Tell me your name, or do your will upon me. It will never be said that Maurice de Bracy was a prisoner of a nameless churl. The Black Knight whispered something into the ear of the vanquished. I yield me to be a true prisoner, rescue or not, said the Norman, exchanging his tone of stern, determined obstinacy for one of deep, thorough submission. Go to the Barbican, said the victor in a tone of authority, and there you can wait for my further orders. Yet first, let me say, said De Bracy, what is important for you to know. Wilfred of Ivanhoe is wounded and a prisoner, and he will die in this burning castle without you helping him. Wilfred of Ivanhoe, said the Black Knight, prisoner and about to perish? The life of every man in that castle shall answer if a hair of his head is singed. Take me to the man's chamber. Go up the winding stairs, said De Bracy. It leads to his apartment. Will you accept my guidance? No, said the Black Knight. Go to the Barbican and await my orders. I don't trust you, De Bracy. During this combat, and the brief conversation which ensued, Cedric, at the head of a body of men, among whom the friar was most conspicuous, had pushed across the bridge as soon as they saw the postern was open, and they drove back the dispirited and despairing followers of De Bracy, of whom some asked quarter, some offered resistance, and most of them fled to the courtyard. De Bracy himself rose from the ground and cast a sad glance after his conqueror. He trusts me not, he repeated, but have I deserved his trust? He then lifted the sword from the floor, took off his helmet in token of submission, and going to the Barbican, gave his sword to Locksley. As the fire augmented, the symptoms of it became apparent in the chamber where Ivanhoe was being watched and tended by Rebecca. He had been awakened from his brief slumber by the noise of the battle, and his attendant, who had, at his anxious desire, again placed herself at the window to watch and report about the attack, was, for at least a while, prevented from observing, either by increase of the smoldering, stifling vapor, anything. At length, though, the volumes of smoke which rolled into the apartment, the cries for water which were heard even above the battle, made themselves sensible, and then they knew that they were in danger. The castle burns, said Rebecca. It burns. What can we do to save ourselves? Fly, Rebecca. Save your life, said Ivanhoe, for no human can help me. I will not, said Rebecca. We will be saved or we will perish together, and my father, what will be his fate? At that moment, the door of the apartment flew open, and the Templar presented himself, a ghastly figure, for his gilded armor was broken and bloody, and the plume was partly shorn away, partly burned off of his helmet. I found you, he said to Rebecca. You will prove that I can keep my word to share weal and woe with you. There is but one path to safety. I've cut my way through 50 dangers to point it to you, and instantly bid you to follow me. Alone, said Rebecca, I will not follow you. If you were born of a woman, if you have but a touch of human charity, if your heart is not as hard as your breastplate, please save my father and this wounded knight. A knight, said the Templar. A knight, Rebecca, must encounter his fate, whether it meet him in the shape of sword or flame. And who cares how a Jew meets his fate? Beast, said Rebecca. I would rather perish in the flames than take your safety." "You don't get to choose, Rebecca. Once did you foil me, but no man can do so twice." And as he said this, he seized the terrified maiden, who filled the air with her shrieks, and bore her out of the room in his arms, despite her cries, and without regarding the menaces and defiance which Ivanhoe was shouting at him. "Hound of the Temple! Stain of your order! Set free that damsel! Traitor of Bois Guilbert! It's Ivanhoe who's commanding you! Villain, I'll take your heart's blood." "I had not found you, Wilfred," said the Black Knight, who right then entered the apartment. "I wouldn't have found you at all except for your shouting." "If you're a true knight," said Wilfred, "don't think of me. Go after the ravisher, save the Lady Rowena, look to the noble Cedric." "In their turn," said the Black Knight. "But you're first." And seizing Ivanhoe, he bore him off with as much ease as the Templar had carried off Rebecca. He rushed with him to the postern, and delivered his burden to the care of 2 yeomen, and then entered the castle yet again to assist in the rescue of the others. One turret was now in bright flames, which flashed out furiously from the window and the shot hole, but in other parts the great thickness of the walls and the roofs of the apartments resisted the progress of the flames, and there the rage of men still triumphed, as scarce more dreadful elements held mastery elsewhere. For the besiegers pursued the defenders of the castle from room to room, and sated in their blood the vengeance which had long animated them against the soldiers of Fondeboeuf. Most of the garrison resisted to the utmost. A few asked quarter, but none received it. The air was filled with the groans and the clashing of arms. The floors were slippery with the blood of despairing and expiring men. Through this confusion, Cedric rushed in quest of Rowena, while faithful Gurth, following him closely enough into the melee, neglected his own safety while he strove to avert the blows that were aimed at Cedric. The noble Saxon was so fortunate as to reach his ward's apartment just as she had abandoned all hope of ever being safe, and with a crucifix in agony clasped to her bosom, sat waiting for death. He committed Rowena to the charge of Gurth, to be conducted in safety to the Barbican, the road to which was now cleared of the enemy, and not yet imperiled by flame. Once accomplished with this, the loyal Cedric hastened himself in his quest to find Athelstine, determined at every risk to himself to save that last scion of Saxon Royal. But before Cedric penetrated as far as the old hall in which he himself had been a prisoner, the inattentive genius of Wamba had procured liberation for both himself and Athelstine, his companion in adversity. I'm going to grab a drink. Okay, sorry about that. I'm coming down with a cold, and I had to get a drink or my voice was going to give out. When the noise of the conflict announced that it was at its hottest, Wamba began to shout with the utmost power of his lungs, "St. George and the Dragon! Bonny Saint for merry England! The castle is won!" And these shouts he rendered even more fearful by banging against each other 2 or 3 pieces of rusty armor which were around the hall. The guard, who had been stationed in the outer of the anteroom, and whose spirits were already in a state of alarm, took fright at Wanda's noise, and leaving the door open behind him, ran to tell the Templar that the foemen had entered the old hall. Meanwhile, the prisoners found no difficulty in making their escape into the anteroom, and from there into the court of the castle, which was now the scene of last contest. Here sat the fierce Templar, mounted on horseback, surrounded by several of the garrison, both on horse and on foot, who had united their strength to that of this renowned leader in order to secure their last chance of safety and retreat that remained to them. The drawbridge had been lowered on his orders, but the passage was beset, for the archers, who had before now only annoyed the castle on that side with their missiles, no sooner saw the flame breaking out and the bridge being lowered than thronged to the entrance, so to prevent the escape of the garrison, and also to secure their own share of booty before the castle burned down. On the other hand, a party of besiegers who had entered by the postern were now issuing out into the courtyard and attacking with great fury the remnant of the defenders, who were assaulted on both sides at once. Animated, however, by despair, and supported by the example of their leader, the remaining soldiers of the castle fought with the utmost valor, and, being well armed, succeeded more than once in driving back their assailants. Though inferior in numbers, they still were working. Rebecca, placed on horseback in front of one of the Templars' Saracen slaves, was in the middle of the little party, and de Bois Guilbert, notwithstanding the confusion of the bloody fray, showed every attention to keeping her safe. Repeatedly he was at her side, neglecting his own defense, held before her the fence of his triangular plated steel shield, and also, starting from his position by her, crying his war cry, dashing forward and striking the earth, right in front of all of his assailants, and then back again once more at her bridle rein. Athelstine, who the reader does know by now was slothful but never a coward, beheld the female form who the Templar was protecting, and thought that it was Rowena who the knight was carrying off, despite all resistance that could be offered. "By the soul of Saint Edward," said Athelstine, "I will rescue her from that overproud knight, and he'll die by my hand." "Think what you do," cried Wamba. "Hasty hand catches frog for fish. By my bauble, that is not the Lady Rowena. See her long dark hair. No, you will not know black from white, while ye be a leader, but I will be no follower. No bones of mine will be broken unless I know I'm dying for someone important. And you, Athelstine, you have no armor. Think you a silk bonnet never turned a steel blade? No, if wilful will you to water, wilful you will be drenched. Deus vobiscum, most doughty Athelstine, said Wamba, letting loose of the hold that he had before now been kept upon the Saxton's tunic. To snatch a mace from the pavement, on which it lay beside one whose dying hand had just relinquished it, to rush on the Templar's band, and to strike in quick succession to the right and left, leveling a warrior at each blow, was, for Athelstine's great strength, now animated with unusual fury, the work of just a moment, and he was soon within 2 yards of Bois Guilbert, who he defied in his loudest voice. "Turn, false-hearted Templar! Let her to who you are unworthy to touch turn. Let turn, limb of a band of a murdering, hypocritical robber. Turn, face me." "Dog," said the Templar with a grinding of his teeth, "I will teach you to blaspheme the holy order of the Temple of Zion." And with these words, half wheeling his steed, he made a demi-courbette towards the Saxton, and rising in his stirrups so as to take full advantage of the descent of the horse, he discharged a fearful blow right upon the head of Athelstine. "Well," said Wamba, "that silken hat keeps out no steel blade." So trenchant was the Templar's weapon that it shore asunder, as if it had been a willow twig, the tough and braided handle of the mace, in which the ill-fated Athelstine reared back to parry the blow, and descending upon Athelstine's head, leveled him with the earth. "Ha!" Beaucent! exclaimed Bois Guilbert. Thus be to the maligners of the Templars. And taking advantage of the dismay which was spread by the fall of Athelstine, and calling out loud, "Those who would save yourselves, follow me!" Brian de Bois Guilbert pushed across the drawbridge, dispersing the archers who would have intercepted them. He was followed by his Saracens and 5 or 6 men-at-arms who had mounted their horses. The Templars' retreat was rendered perilous by the number of arrows shot off at him and his party, but this did not prevent him from galloping around to the Barbican, of which, according to his previous plan, he supposed it possible that De Bracy might be in possession of. "De Bracy! De Bracy!" he shouted. "Are you there?" "I'm here," said De Bracy, "but I am a prisoner." "Can I rescue you?" cried Bois Guilbert. "No," said De Bracy. "I have rendered me rescue or no rescue. I'm a true prisoner. Save yourself. There are hawks abroad. Put the sea between you and England. I dare say no more than that." "Well," said the Templar, "if you will tarry here, remember, I have redeemed word and glove. Be the hawks where they will. Methinks of the walls at the preceptory of Templestowe, which will be cover sufficient enough, and there will I, like a heron, to her haunt head." And saying this, he galloped off. Those of the castle who had not gotten to horse still continued to fight desperately with the besiegers after the departure of the Templar, but in despair of quarter that they entertained any hope of escape. The fire was spreading rapidly through all of the castle when Ulrica, who had at first kindled it, appeared on the turret in the guise of one of the ancient furies, and yelled forth a war song such as of yore raised upon the field by the scalds of the heathen Saxons. Her long, disheveled gray hair flew back from her uncovered head. The inebriating delight of gratified vengeance was in her eyes with the fire of insanity, and she brandished the distaff. She held it in her hand as if she had been one of the fatal sisters who spun and abridged the thread of a human life. Tradition has preserved some wild strophes of the barbarous hymn which she chanted wildly in that scene of fire and slaughter, and I will repeat them here. Whet the bright steel, sons of the white dragon. Kindle the torch, daughter of Hengst. The steel glimmers not for the carving of the banquet, its hard, broad, shapely poniard. The torch goeth not to the bridal chamber, it steams and glitters blue with sulphur. Whet the steel, the raven croaks, light the torch, Zennebach is yelling. Whet the steel, sons of the dragon, kindle the torch, daughter of Hengst. The black cloud is low over the Thane's castle. The eagle screams, he rides in its bosom. Scream not, grey rider of the sable cloud. The banquet has been prepared. The maidens of Valhalla look forth. The race of Hengsts will send them guests. Shake your black tresses, maidens of Valhalla, and strike your loud timbrels for joy. Many a haughty step bends to your halls, many a helmed head. Dark sits the evening upon the Thane's castle, the black clouds gather round. Soon they will be red as the blood of the valiant. The destroyer of forests shall shake his red crest against them. He, the bright consumer of palaces, broad waves he his blazing banner, red, wide, and dusky. Over the strife of the valiant, his joy is in the clashing swords and broken bucklers. He loves to lick the hissing blood as it bursts warm from the wounds. All must perish. The sword cleaveth the helmet, The strong armor pierced by the lance, fire devours the dwelling of princes, engines break down the fences of battle, all must perish. The race of Hengst is gone, the name of Horsa no more. Shrink not then from your doom, sons of the sword. Let your blades drink blood like wine. Feast ye in the banquet of slaughter. By the light of the blazing halls, strong be your swords, while your blood is warm, and spare neither for pity nor fear, for vengeance only has an hour. Strong hate will expire. I also must perish. The towering flames had now surmounted every obstruction, and they rose to the evening skies, one huge and burning beacon, which was seen far and wide through the country. Tower after tower crashed down with a blazing roof and rafter, and the combatants were all driven from the courtyard. The vanquished, of which very few remained, scattered and escaped into the woods. The victors, assembling in large bands, gazed with wonder, not unmixed with fear, upon the flames, in which their own ranks and arms were glowing a dusky red. The maniac figure of the Saxon Ulrica was for a long time visible on the stand she had chosen, tossing her arms around with wild exultation, as if she rained imprints of the flames that she had raised. Finally, with a crash, the entire turret gave way, and she perished in the flames which had consumed her tyrant. An awful pause of horror silenced each murmur of the spectators, who, for the space of a few moments, shared not a finger to even sign off the cross. Then the voice of Locksley was heard. "Shout, yeomen! This den of tyrants is no more. Let each bring his spoil to our chosen place of rendezvous at the trysting tree in the Hart Hall Walk, for there, at the break of day, we will make just partition among our own bands, and amongst our worthy allies, as we have succeeded in this great deed of vengeance." And that is the end of the chapter. I'm not going to lie, I'm still a little sad that Ulrica chose to go up with the castle. I get why she did it. I do. But I'm a little sad about it. Also, since I've seen Robin Hood, I already have my suspicions about the Black Knight, but it is quite suspicious that De Bracy hears the true name of the Black Knight and is just like, okay, I surrender. I don't trust him. I don't trust him any more than I trust the Black Knight. And I mean, I guess it's good that Ivanhoe got rescued, considering the book's named Ivanhoe. It would be kind of bad if he had perished in the flames. I'm glad that Wamba got out. I am very glad that Ivanhoe got out. I'm glad that Girth got out. I guess it's okay that Cedric got out. Not going to cry over Athelstein. I'm still a little bit worried about Isaac, and I'm very, very, very mad. I'm now mad at Wamba for seeing that it was Rebecca and not Rowena who was captured and being like, don't care about her. You die, Athelstein. Who promptly did die. Anyway, that is where we're going to leave it today. That was quite the chapter. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I will see you tomorrow.